Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on traditional headless and hybrid CMSs, which is best for you. We have a very exciting conversation today on how to leverage a hybrid CMS to future-proof and drive innovation. A brief overview of what we'll discuss today. We'll kick off with some introductions from our guest speakers, Dan P. and Dan M. Then we'll give an overview of what is headless. Jumping into why choose headless versus traditional versus hybrid. What do these different frameworks help you with? Top use cases that you can use for each of these frameworks. And then we'll talk about considerations for your CMS framework. What questions should your organization be asking? And we'll close out with 3 takeaways from our discussion today, ending, as always, with Q&A from the audience. So like I said, I have Dan M. and Dan P. joining me today. I'm Tammy Perlstein. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager from Acquia. I work on our Drupal Cloud team. I'm very excited to be here with you all today. Dan M., why don't you give a brief introduction on yourself?
Yeah, hi, Dan Martino. I'm head of DXP Solutions at TA Digital, which includes everything we do from content and commerce perspective.
Awesome, and we're happy to have you. And Dan P., if you wouldn't mind giving an intro for yourself as well.
Sure, Dan Pearson. I'm the director of our Acquia practice at Proficient. So work very heavily on the platform and working with digital experience platforms for many years now.
Fantastic. And we're so excited that both of you have joined us for this conversation today. There's a lot of interesting topics, and you both have a ton of expertise from the field working with customers across different industries and verticals. So very excited to have both of you here with us. So just a brief overview, Acquia is an open digital experience company. We're the leader for Drupal, which is an open source community and open source CMS. We were founded in 2007. We were built cloud native from the get-go, and we've been a proven leader in industry reports across Gartner, Forrester, and IDC. We have over 4,000 customers across many different sectors in the government space, retail, e-commerce, really every vertical you could think of. And we also have over 30 customers in the Fortune 100. So a wide breadth of solutions here we provide at Acquia, and we're excited to talk specifically about CMS today. TA Digital is a global boutique digital transformation agency with 22 years of experience, focusing on helping customers deliver exceptional user experiences with data-driven methodologies and leading platforms. They have over 1,000 consultants, over 30 Fortune 500 clients, and have delivered over 4,000 projects. They even have a 97% customer satisfaction rate. So just a wealth of experience, really focused on helping their customers meet their goals and deliver incredible experiences for their customers. And Proficient, another digital consultancy, focusing on helping enterprises and the largest brands connect with their customers and grow their businesses. Proficient was founded in 1997, has over 40 global locations, is projected to hit a 920 million revenue target in 2022, over 6,500 colleagues, a 90% repeat business rate, and is publicly traded on the NASDAQ. And Proficient is also a gold level partner with Acquia and is certified in both Drupal Cloud and Marketing Cloud practices. So again, just a wealth of experience, many different customers across different verticals, and like I said, a wealth of just fantastic success stories that we'll share with you today. So diving right into things, we'll start with a brief overview of headless as well as traditional CMS frameworks, and I'll kick it over to Dan M. to give us an overview.
Yeah, so when you think about the traditional CMS architecture, really, in the simple sense, the CMS controls everything. When you make a request for a new page or a new piece of content, that request is going to get down to the CMS. The CMS is going to collect the content. It's going to assemble it and then render some fully formed HTML page or snippet of HTML off to another system or page, what have you. So, in this case, the CMS really controls the flow from soup to nuts. There's obviously external caching layers in between and what have you. So not all requests go down to the CMS, but fundamentally it's controlling the majority of the pipeline. Next slide. So in a headless world, what we're really doing is we're decoupling that assembly and delivery portion of the flow. And if you jump forward to the next slide, what you really think about in a headless architecture is that things are making requests to APIs. Your headless CMS will offer a set of APIs that allow external systems, whether it's an e-commerce system, an app, a rendering layer, what have you, make requests of content. It will assemble the required content and return it back in something HTML, not HTML, XML. More common these days is some sort of GraphQL response. And then the application that is requesting that content is responsible for assembling and presentation of the content. So, common cases you'll see is someone is building a React app on Node, and they're going to make a request to an API, fill slots with content, but ultimately it's the React app's job to assemble and place that content within the experiences needed. So, really both approaches make a lot of sense in the right situation. There's, both are very much valid. I think a traditional CMS approach is one that is best in a high content environment where you're dealing with a majority of static content, news articles, informational sites. Traditionally you're talking about a low code environment for changes to the site and changes to the experience. They're highly configurable. You get into a situation where content authors can really do everything they need to do to publish a new page on their own without IT intervention. So suddenly your ability to make changes to a given site are really only dependent on your workflows and governance processes. It's been the standard in the CMS space for 10, 15 years now. And so it's a tried and true approach. And as with a lot of these platform architectures, it's simple. I have a CMS, vertically and horizontally scaled, running my site. But really it's works best in a world of web pages and, again, highly static pages. In the headless environment, overall, it's a higher code environment. You're building apps in front of the content, but you have a lot more developer freedom. Your developers are using the latest and greatest tools and capabilities on the market. They're not working within a platform's context. Your architectures are more flexible. You can implement microservices architectures in front of it. You can implement different caching approaches in front of it. You can take more cutting edge approaches. It's really works best. Apps are one area where this is absolutely a must have in IoT, but areas where you have highly dynamic experiences or data driven experience as well is where headless is best. So keep moving. All right, Dan, take it away.
Yeah, so when we think about those architectures, where does Acquia fit into that? And so each of these architectures that Dan went through, there's sort of a movement in the industry that you see organizations popping up who claim to be specialized in one of those architectures, so it's headless or traditional. In reality, you don't need a specialized content management system in order to address each of these architectures. So for Acquia, you can use that same platform often for different projects. So you might have a project within your organization where headless is the right solution, but another where a unified architecture might be more appropriate, a more traditional approach might be more appropriate. One of the benefits of a platform like Acquia is that you can use that same platform for these multiple projects, get some scale to your investment, and also use the right architecture for the right problems. So in that unified architecture, you've got Acquia CMS and their Site Studio. That Site Studio gives authors a flexible component system, but also a low-code editor, so an ability to enable your users to create alternative components and change things. It's going to empower users to make changes without dev cycles in order to do so. But then in that headless CMS approach, you've got JSON APIs and GraphQL that's going to drive that content into custom applications. So if you're using, as Dan mentioned, mobile apps or other solutions, IoT, those are going to be great ways to consume content from APIs. You have decoupled applications where the end result still might be a website or might be a web app, but we're going to use front-end frameworks like React or whatever your team likes to use to be able to build out that experience. Acquia CMS, for instance, comes with a starter kit for Next.js, so you can use that or really anything you prefer. This can be a real value to a development team, being able to use the latest and greatest of what you're interested in. You can also look at a progressive in that decoupled app. You can start to progressively decouple approaches where what you're building might be micro applications, which are still dropped on a page within an Acquia CMS page. So you're kind of blending the two different, the decoupled and the unified architecture, and kind of taking a best of both worlds approach. So there's a lot available there. Or you can even, in the new movement with things like Gatsby, you can manage that content within Drupal, within Acquia, and then build that into either a flat HTML site or a Jamstack application. And that's going to allow you to improve scalability and performance and leverage a different architecture there. So you have a lot that you can do across with that same Acquia platform to be able to achieve all of these different architectures.
Thank you both, Dan. Yeah, thank you both, Dan P. and Dan M. for those overviews into traditional and headless architectures, how Acquia plays into supporting a multitude of architectures without replatforming. But I think what would be really impactful is to hear from both of you in terms of your success stories, the challenges that you've seen, the learnings that you've gone through with your customers in implementing traditional as well as headless and even hybrid frameworks in real life examples. So I'll turn it over to both of you and open up the floor for some discussion and some sharing around your experiences and what you've worked on and seen with your customers. So Dan P., we'll start with you. How has your organization worked with customers to achieve success with a traditional CMS framework? We know that this is a tried and true method. It's been the standard for years. But just talk us through what your customers have seen with traditional CMS frameworks and why you chose that specific method.
Sure. Yeah. Like you said, traditional CMS has been what we've done forever, right? So it's certainly done plenty of that. If I think about a recent example, we were working on a marketing website for a regional bank, and as we were evaluating architecture, we started asking questions of their team around how they wanted to support it. So we have, their IT team at the end of the day is much more focused on a logged in portal experience, right? It's online banking. There's some mission critical components of that. And what they found was they just really weren't staffing the marketing team development cycles nearly enough. And so the marketing team really needed more ability to evolve the site quickly in a more self-service way. So they have a technical team that supports the site, but it's really it's not at the level that they would need in order to do that kind of continuous improvements that they were looking for. And so that their marketing team actually had some skill sets internally around HTML, CSS, but they didn't really have developers there. And so looking at Acquia CMS, they ultimately chose that traditional approach because Well, one, it's made the authorship experience incredibly easy. You're dragging components onto the page. You're building up experiences in a flexible manner. So you think about it, you build a component system that's very flexible and can change over time. And the Acquia CMS tool gave them that ability. But it also meant that those users could change that component system over time within reason using the low code features. So when they realized that what they wanted was a slightly, they want that component, but with 2 buttons on it instead of 1, that's not a development process that enters into a sprint. They're able to do that with just changes within the low code editor. So when we think about, what is it that we're looking for in traditional CMS, we typically see sites that have less interactivity, as Dan was mentioning, static content, those types of things, but also a real emphasis around making it easy for authors to change things themselves. And then, typically you're looking at designs that don't change frequently. You're building a design system, you're working within it, but you're not necessarily constantly shifting the look and feel of the site either. So I think that's what we see when we see traditional.
Yeah, and I think that's a great perspective to take as well in terms of understanding the key characteristics for a use case around leveraging a traditional CMS framework, right? It's that ease of use for authors, easily changing content and updating content within, that design system that doesn't frequently change, is pretty static. So thank you for, sharing that story with us. And I'll pass it over to Dan M., who will walk us through the headless perspective. What have you seen when working with customers in terms of implementing a headless architecture, and what was the use case for your customer to leverage a headless framework?
Yeah, I think where you see the headless concepts work best, and really the leader has been in the e-commerce and retail space. When you think about an e-commerce experience, it is fundamentally a data-driven experience. While you're going to have marketing content on a page, and you're going to have images, assets, content, A, it's not long-form content, and B, the experience today are constantly and dynamically changing from, presenting products based on interactions happening in the last 30 minutes, from trying to present an experience based on how that customer is interacting with the site in their given session. So where we've seen it most common first and most successful is in that e-commerce space. Additionally, like when you think about an e-commerce app, and this is similar with most data-driven experiences, there's multiple sources of data. So when I hit an e-commerce homepage, I'm going to be hitting a customer management system. I'm going to be hitting a search and merchandising platform. I may be dropping into an e-commerce platform. I may have a third-party optimization solution on the site, third-party recommendations. I'm really bringing together a multitude of data sources, and I have 300 tags on the page to go with it. So having something more flexible is key because of all these disparate data sources. And then conversely, the drive for performance. We just can't wait till everything comes to the server and render it. We've got to render as we get information in order to keep the user's attention. So that's been really the key area. And we've seen this kind of headless trend hitting from 10 years ago in the retail and commerce space. Things like you never hear anymore, but like Backbone.js and things like that. Nowadays, I think it dovetails from that in the sense that, any data-driven experience, whether it's a customer portal where you're providing both messaging and rich data, an internal portal, I think that's key. The trend I see more often now is that, 5-10 years ago, marketers were focused on writing content for the web. Now they're writing content for the web. They're writing content for an app. They're writing content for email. They're writing content for multiple departments. So when you're moving from web content management to really enterprise content management, where you want to write once and deliver anywhere, you start to look at these headless approaches as they are going to optimize that content authoring process. as well as apps. I mean, apps are, you'll see some apps that are rendering some level of HTML, but the more popular approach is running a native application that needs to pull content in through APIs. So again, another area where a headless architecture is just a must-have.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on this perfectly as well, that the flexibility that comes with headless in terms of delivering content anywhere across the wildly growing amount of channels that marketers are focusing on is just a fantastic use case for headless implementations. We've heard from you both around the benefits and the use cases that come along with a traditional CMS framework or headless, but there's going to be challenges that coincide with each of these different architectures. So we'd love to hear from you both on some challenges that you've seen, as well as the learnings and best practices that have come out of those challenges. So Dan M., we'll start with you. In terms of a traditional CMS framework, what have you seen, or what have been the major challenges that you've overcome with your customers? And what are the best practices that you could share with our audience today?
Yeah, I think, to me, the challenges are often people and then what you do with the tool, really understanding the intent of the tool and its bounds. So, when you're going with a traditional CMS, you need to find people that understand the depths of that CMS front end and back end and how it does what it does. And that can really limit the pool of talent you can pull from. I've seen companies really build out learning capabilities within their organization because the only way to really adjust to that is to bring people in with the raw skill sets like PHP, like Java, like .NET skill sets, and train them and build this factory model of training people on the platform. But that is a limitation. It's also key to success, is really having that depth of knowledge on the platform. I think the other thing is understanding what the platform is intended to do and what its limits are. In a traditional CMS, I've seen the most challenges arise from people trying to do things with the CMS it's not necessarily intended to do. So you want to keep it within its swim lane, so to speak, and use it how it's best meant to be used. And this is why things like hybrid make a ton of sense, because there are situations where your traditional CMS just isn't the right tool. So, from that standpoint, the best practices we've learned is really follow those vendor recommendations and best practices. It's key because they're going to be there to support the product long after your project's done, through the life of the relationship with the customer. So staying aligned to the vendor is key to being successful and managing operational costs. I think the other thing is just really partnering with your vendor. So if you're using Acquia, partner with Acquia, bring them in, use them, treat them as a first-class citizen in your project. That's going to help you better, use the platform as it's intended to be used. It's going to help you really gain value out of that platform. And when you need help, your vendor's going to be there when you need them, and they're going to understand your situation and be more reactive, or not reactive, be more partnering in that sense, be able to react quicker. All right, that's it.
Yeah, definitely. And being proactive too, right? So maybe foreseeing challenges that may come up based on customers you've worked with in the past, and understanding how to navigate those challenges before they come up. And exactly. It's not just also understanding your internal teams, but understanding the people that you have at your disposal. So vendors like yourself and Acquia, Proficient, all of these different agencies that are here that have expertise that really can lend their experience and their learnings to partner strongly with customers. And Dan P., similar question around challenges with headless implementations, as well as any learned best practices you can share with our group.
Yeah, I think, obviously when you're looking at a headless implementation, the first thing it really requires is a strong development team. If you don't have that either internally or through a partner, you really aren't going to be successful because it's a very code heavy approach to building. So, you really want to have that team in place. But more than being strong, you really want to look at speed as well. So when you think about, you're really putting the development team in many cases between the business and achieving its goals. And so if you're saying, yeah, that'll be part of next quarter's release, or we're sort of waiting and batching up a lot of fixes and we'll put them all out at once, that speed to releasing functionality could really start to gate your business's ability to do what they're trying to do online, right? So you think about achieving digital goals, you really need either a continuous delivery mindset or at least a very frequent release cycle that the business can count on. So you need to make sure that we're able to go quickly, that we're able to build things quickly, but also that we have that methodology in place to deliver on that continuous delivery methodology. In terms of best practices for headless, you want to build that partnership between your authors and your developers. So we really want to make sure that there is this understanding between the two, that you're enabling authors as developers, that developers understand what the authors are trying to accomplish, that the authors know how to ask what they're looking for. You really want to build that connection. You really want to make sure the authors have the ability to do things like preview what their content changes are going to look like within the TrueSight experience, and not just on the back end of authoring. So as you move towards headless, one of the challenges is the look and feel of what you're authoring can really now be abstracted away from how it will ultimately be delivered, because it's ultimately being delivered in a different app. And there are solutions to bringing those things together so you can preview that content within the end result. Because, let's be honest, things can look different in context, and that author needs that feedback loop. You really want to expose as much control as you can. So things like changing navigation or error messages, or even the layout of the page, are things you really want to enable as a development team looking at building in headless. So you don't want to control too much in code. You want to give as much as possible to the team, within reason and with protection in place. You want to make sure that you're enabling that team. And then lastly, I think in terms of best practices, it's choosing a modern framework. So, one of the benefits of leveraging a headless architecture is you can use the frameworks and the approaches that are modern and exciting, and, allow you to recruit and retain talent that are interested in working in these new approaches. And so, as you start to, leverage React and other frameworks that are out there, using one that your team is excited about is going to be really helpful there.
Definitely. And a theme across both of your stories and sharings here is focusing on the people and understanding your teams in terms of the structure and what each of these people in your organizations needs out of a CMS, understanding the process that you have in place, as well as the technology, both the limitations and the accessibility of the technology, and understanding those best practices and leveraging vendors to help in understanding those best practices and overcome those challenges. So great points from you both. Thank you. I just want to jump into one last sharing here while we're on this topic, and focusing more on the hybrid story. And, as we've talked about the benefits of traditional and the benefits of headless, challenges, best practices, I would love to hear from you both around implementing hybrid frameworks and the use cases you've seen for your customers and the benefits from a hybrid architecture. So Dan P., why don't we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, I think honestly that's the most common solution for us lately. Thinking about an example of a hybrid, we had an e-commerce project we worked on that had a mixture of basic product information, which is being constantly imported from an internal system. But then the marketing team was augmenting that product catalog with more marketing specific content. So that team needed the ability to add components to product detail pages, needed to relevant videos, any sort of additional content they wanted to add into that product catalog. But then the problem became, while that was great for the website, and that those components in a traditional CMS gave them a lot of that flexibility, that product catalog also needed to be delivered to a native app. And so looking at a mobile app that's going to consume that same product catalog now where Drupal is acting as the source of truth for the extended product catalog, for the richer product catalog. How do we get that content there? So they now have a mobile app that's consuming headless APIs to get that product detail content over into the mobile app. So now you have a headless approach there for the mobile app, getting the content where it needs to be in a native app, and then you also have the traditional CMS approach. So you're leveraging both of those concepts at the same time, depending on the channel.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think that the hybrid approach is common and flourishing out there, and I think it's very much a way to go forward. It's always about right tool, right job. And in a sense, like I have a CPG customer that has had a CMS-based experience. It's a brand experience. It's about using their products. It's about accentuating the products, telling the story around the company. And it works. It does its job well. They're now looking to move into more direct-to-consumer commerce, leveraging more modern approaches to commerce. And so they're going to take a headless approach on that side. And it makes perfect sense. So why take away what already works? You just want to, I think the key in any hybrid model is just don't expose that to the customer. Don't have shop dot and www. Don't have different looks and feels and headers and footers. Integrate the two approaches so that the customer seamlessly moves between a brand / CMS experience and a headless commerce experience. They don't really care what's underneath. They just want to get the job done. And in that case, you can really provide the tools and capabilities to your customer and your internal teams that help them get their job done as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you both for diving into the hybrid stories. And absolutely correct. I think right now, especially with the ability to leverage a traditional CMS and also leverage the benefits of a headless CMS, you'll be able to, with the organizations you're working with, pull in the benefits and deliver on that digital experience, but really make it seamless, as you said, Dan M, for the customer, and aligning brand and experience so that there's no change in what they see. And it's, you're engaging with them, right content, right person, right time across the customer journey as well. So I think it's really about understanding the project, understanding the goals, understanding your team, and then leveraging the right technology to achieve those goals. So jumping into the considerations for your CMS framework, there's, especially with this hybrid framework that many organizations are leveraging today, it's understanding, what do you need to consider for your organization in order to leverage each of these architectures. So we'll start by taking a look at the team structure. And this slide here, if you look at the top portion, there's a marketer on the left, a developer on the right, and a business technologist in the middle. And Gartner research states that IT leaders that are rolling out a new DXP strategy must establish this fusion team of stakeholders, which is what you see, this group of individuals across your business in order to really achieve the results that your business is looking for. But this fusion team, this is just an example that we're posing here today. It could be different within your organization. It could be more marketers and some IT personas, or more IT and developers and one marketer, one business user. And, maybe it's a collection of business technologists, those people within your organizations that are focused on delivering business goals and aligning technology to deliver those goals. So however you choose to design this fusion team, as Gartner calls it, it's really imperative that you understand the structure of your team and then each of the needs that those users on that team require out of a CMS. And we've heard from Dan M and Dan P about this today, and understanding, a marketer or content author would look for that low-code traditional. A developer would look for the flexibility that comes with a headless CMS, but being able to marry the two with a hybrid approach is really, yielding the benefits of both for all users across these teams. So we'll take a look, Dan M., at how some of your customers have structured their teams for success and how important team structure has been to achieving goals, specifically around implementing headless architectures.
Yeah, I think that when you're implementing a headless architecture, what's key is that your developers, they're getting a lot more flexibility in their worlds, but they also have to be more responsive to a business that is demanding rapid change. So what I've seen successful is, the old method is I've got an IT team and I've got a dev team and requests come in and I prioritize those requests and I release changes I may release changes every day, every week, every month. But it's kind of one big team taking in changes together. Whereas I've seen aligning your dev teams and your business teams more towards business objectives. So, for example, within an e-commerce site, having an upper funnel team, and it's a set of business practitioners and technical practitioners working together on upper funnel problems, homepage, section landing pages, campaign landing pages. I have a search and merchandising team, and they are technical and functional practitioners working on product listing pages, detail pages, how products are presented in experiences. I may have a conversion team, and again, that team is focused on a section of products. But what's important is moving those developers closer to the business and aligning or organizing them in a way that is parallel to how the business works. That way they're more understanding, more responsive, more empathetic to the business needs, and they're ultimately going to be more responsive. And I think, aligning to business objectives suddenly makes them part of the solution. They're not just the IT team getting in the way. They're actually bringing ideas to the table on how we meet specific goals through technical solutions. So, I've seen that be successful for my customers.
Fantastic. And Dan P., how about your experiences with your customers in understanding team structure and aligning to business goals, such as Dan M. shared with us?
I think that, nowadays, I think most organizations have moved to an agile or scrum approach to organizing teams, but that usually is around the technical side, right? So the initial rollout of agile within an environment is often led by IT, and it's meant to control the influx and of requests and things like that from the business, so that they can prioritize and that there can be some clarity on what we're working on, right? So it's really meant almost as a gate to put up in front of IT to help protect from the many different priorities that come around. And I think where I've seen the most success is where that agile team isn't purely development, right? It's developers, but also user experience strategists or business stakeholders who understand what we're trying to accomplish here, marketers, right? If you put all those people together onto a single Scrum team with a stated goal, we've seen a lot of an ability to accomplish, because when you create the artificial walls between organizations, you create that friction, and I think people are motivated by their team succeeding. So if we start to define what team looks like, work together, I think I see better response, better action out of a team towards the business goals. It's just that understanding between the team.
And let's say your organization or customers that you work with today aren't necessarily architected or structured this way, but there's a champion within that org that really wants to leverage this type of team structure. How would both of you, or have you worked with customers in the past that have implemented change within their organizations to create fusion teams or create these digitalization teams that align to those business goals, as you both have talked about? Dan P., why don't you share with us first?
Sure. Yeah, I think candidly, I think organizations are still figuring this out. This is all still very new. This fusion team I gave at Gartner came out with this, I think, showcasing what's happening already, but also I think is evolving. Right. So I like that the business technologist in this diagram at the top center is a mixture of marketer and developer. As I said before, we have to break down these barriers, reduce the lines between roles or even organizations within these teams. So I think marketers need to better understand technology. I think developers need to better understand what marketing users are trying to accomplish. If that's new to your organization, I think a great place to start would be to share an understanding from each other's roles on the project. So I think training and explanation of why we need features or how it's going to work, or why this is going to be harder than expected. All those types of conversations that go back and forth between marketers and developers, I think, are really valuable. You need that big picture idea. You need to understand where you're going, and I think that sometimes the lines in the sand on what's your job and what's my job can start to exacerbate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think when you're going through this process and through this change, I think it's important to understand why you're making this change. If you're taking the head off your CMS, or if you're initially implementing CMS and you decide to go headless, why are you doing it? Are you doing it for the right reasons? What are the metrics of success? And then organize yourself accordingly. There's nothing worse than taking an approach that either doesn't make sense. You're doing it for the sake of a trend, which we see oftentimes. I see my customers always talking about, well, we need headless, we need headless, we need headless. And the end result of a headless CMS is just static HTML content. Well, maybe you don't. But when they're doing it for the right reasons, ensure that your organization and your processes support those reasons. Oftentimes, the reason for this change is made at a level where it is then handed off to others for execution, and those others will implement the processes and organizational structures they're used to. So really understanding the why and aligning to the why and making changes accordingly so you actually gain the benefits of a headless architecture, that you actually give the developers that freedom, that you are innovating, that you are able to take on new and great technology and swap out old and legacy and inefficient technology quickly and easily. So I always think that's really important to stay focused on the why.
Definitely. And I think both of you made some really fantastic points around understanding the why, but also understanding the who, and understanding what the who cares about, the why behind the who as well. So understanding each of the people across you, the other that you'll be working with, and then really making sure that you're making the right technology choice based on the business goals, and ensuring that your business is able to deliver on those initiatives. So fantastic points from you both. I've really enjoyed hearing from both of your experiences today. I'm sure our audience has as well. Like I said, there's just 3 key takeaways that we're going to leave with you all today. And the first is really that headless isn't the answer to all of your challenges. Headless is great. It's very flexible. We heard a lot about the endless possibilities that you can achieve with headless, but it's right in the right context for the right project. And then the second key takeaway is that just because you're going headless does not mean that you have to re-platform. It's just a change in the way that you use your platform. So understanding that as you go to implement headless, a new technology and reap the benefits of that, or you look to leverage a hybrid CMS framework, that doesn't mean that you need to look to implement technologies for every single architecture you look to leverage. And then lastly, put the right team in place. We talked a lot about team structure. We talked a lot about the benefits of understanding your team's skills and enhancing those skills. But understanding how your team is constructed is an important consideration when looking at implementing a traditional or headless or hybrid CMS framework. So making sure that you're enabling the right team members with the right technology and putting the right team structure in place that sets your organization up for success. And I'll open up the floor to Dan P and Dan M if you have any final closing thoughts you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, I mean, I think really it's just, right tool, right job. And I think the key point is that headless has its pros and cons, and traditional has its pros and cons. And it's really about knowing the trade-offs and using the right tool for the right situation. Headless is great. Traditional is great, but either way. And then, ultimately from there, organizing yourselves appropriately. So, Dan? Sorry, I actually.
Thing I would add is as you're rolling up. Oh, sorry. Too many Dans. I think I would agree with everything you said, and I would just add that when you're implementing headless, there's a lot that your team is expecting to be present in the platform that no longer is there unless you build it. So there's a little bit more upfront work. So talking about preview, talking about other things like that. So I think just recognizing that there are trade-offs in the headless approach that you need to address to kind of get back to feature parity with what your organization needs.
Fantastic. And again, thank you both for joining us today. I know I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing from you both and, talking about the different frameworks and where each one lends to success. But I'll open up the floor for Q&A.